I'd love to start with how this work and this exhibition came to be. And I was personally lucky enough to be here at the very beginning of this work, being at the Yellow Round residency. But can you just talk to me a little bit about how and where this work came from, what you were thinking when you started, and if from that point, that seedling, if the thought process has changed at all?
Sure. So the Yellow Round is a residency that Nicole and Patrick invited me to in their amazing ceramic studio, so thank you. Because it was the beginning of this iteration of this work, yes. And this work started, I, more than 10 years ago, was making sculptures that hung and interfered with the video light, but they didn't make sound and the video had no sound. And then I started to feel like I wanted sound in those environments. And I collaborated for a long time with another artist and musician, and we made sound art and music and performance in the environments. We were called Black Lake with Slink Moss. And then slowly the sculptures that were hanging started to make sound, and we would interact with them. And then I started thinking a lot about the body and performance, and I wanted them not to hang, but to be something that you could interact with physically better, and almost like wear, like kind of wear. Was that my idea? But I didn't want them to be costumes. So these are actually clothing racks that I repurposed, that I found, and or I collect them on eBay or what, yard sales and things. And
that's so amazing. I never made that connection, but it's so perfect. Yes.
Yeah, they're kind of like clothing. They're connected to costume or clothing, and indirectly. And so that piece was at the Yellow Round, but everything else is new. And a couple
it's
of
also been totally reworked.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's I added things.
Yeah.
And but so I just, the materials all are definitely like gathered and thought about it, or made. Some are made from clay or from wood, or macrame, and some are found objects that are sort of using like an art material. But it's always about what sounds I think generate.
Yeah.
The sound is kind of driving it.
Yeah. And with that, I mean, I guess because we're on this material conversation, I mean, just those globs of fluorescent orange duct tape to me are just like absolutely pure heaven. And sort of using that sort of, and then you very like fluidly have this incredible orange glaze. And there's just these colors that are moving through the room.
Yeah.
I see yellow, pink, a lot of hot tones. And could you talk to me a little bit about your use of color and what it means?
Well, they're visual pops and sounds to me. The palette is always about how I think it'll relate to. It's both I'm bridging the visual and sonic, and so it's not that one is. I'm going back and forth always, so it's not that I'm picking the colors because of how I think about the sounds that are sort of related and almost in a synesthetic way, but it's a back and forth between a painterly approach toward making sculptures with color and what sounds they feel like they make. The orange is a big sharp pop. And
yeah,
I love that, and I like.
And what's the pink?
It's also
a pop. Would
Yeah.
it make different pops? I
Yeah,
guess it's just
a
so
snap, or
interesting.
like a snap.
Yeah.
And,
It's so interesting to me because, like, I've come to music through my children more than it was always a part of my life, but understanding it differently. And so much in the conversation of music, when they're learning how to play pieces or in critique of works, it's always talking about the sound and the colors that they're creating.
Yeah.
And I've always had such a hard time
With the colors of sound.
with the colors of sound, or like this idea that like sound has color. I'm like, what color is that? Being such a visual person, but this work is like the middle ground of that. You know, like it's pulling it all together like almost formally and visually, but then it actually does something and creates something, which is it's like it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To you, the whole idea of the sound of color, or the
The sound of color here
of sound,
makes sense to
and
me.
the color of sound.
When I'm listening to like a critique of a piece and they're talking about pulling out colors, I don't get it.
Sounds of color.
Sounds. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I was saying that I had a job teaching in the public schools doing these special art projects, and one point I had to make books, and I decided to have the kids listen to jazz and make these accordion books where they made the colors of the sounds that they were hearing, shapes and colors. And some kids really got it and some didn't. I think some people can do this and some people, it's intuitive and some.
Yeah.
But that's kind of
Where it's all coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's a totally different thing when it's actually illustrated to you or like given to you as the color. And I could go to sound from these colors, but I can't go from sound to color. You know, if that makes any sense.
You can go one way. Yeah.
But those are can I ask you some of my other questions?
Yeah, of course.
So I would love to know more about the title, To Be the Waves in the Ocean, which is so beautiful. And you're always a good wordsmith, so please.
Titles are like almost one of the media.
Yeah.
I feel like, and often they used to be connected to lyrics. I'm not really writing songs in the same way, but to be the waves. Well, it's sound waves for me. Like sound. I was thinking about sound waves and how their energy and it goes through us and the ocean of sound, because like sound. Conceptually, I don't think sound ever really disappears in the universe, and that's so interesting because we just keep adding to it. Like it ripples out into the universe, and where would it go? You know?
Yeah.
Like so, sound is infinite.
That's like that idea of like sound being recorded inside an amphora.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but also if you know, we are experiencing, let's like just say now or in our lives, difficult things we both have in our personal lives, and it feels like an overwhelming wave. But then if you can step out into the ocean of experience, it's just all one. It's just one. We're connected to everything, and so we're connected to the ocean of sound, and we're connected to all the energy, and it's somehow peaceful for me to think of being the ocean rather than the waves. So it works on, you know, poetically in that way.
It's also collaborative.
Well, you know, yes, it's collaborative.
It's like a group of waves, right? As opposed to like just the singular object.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In the way that everything's interconnected, is a collaboration.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, art is a collaboration, or listening to music. It's meaningless without a viewer or a listener. As sound waves don't even create sound without an ear. Yeah. They're just an energy. So without the drum, you know. So, yeah, I love collaborating, as you know. But I think of art as a collaboration.
Yeah, completely and totally.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess this is going back a little bit to, before I turn the page, a little bit to the conversation a little bit prior. And in the press release, you had this beautiful quote of, I think these paintings as visual sound, with the plywood grain as the rhythm section. Each painting is generated by the wood grain. So just kind of before we kind of start talking about the individual sculptures, do you see, like, could this painting be a score for this piece? Or are they all sort of like an interconnected dialogue? Or, how do they inform each other? I guess that's what I'm asking you.
Oh, how do the paintings inform the sculpture?
Yeah, or does every sculpture, every piece inform each other? And can one be given like a direct relationship with another, or are they more independent pieces?
Well, I think of it all as one piece, like kind of like this is in I'm very installation minded, so I think of like this as one instrument, the room or whatever, or whatever.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, like whatever. However I set it up, it's one instrument, or one, and they're also individual pieces. I didn't think of them as scoring, but I love that idea. Maybe not a particular sculpture, but just scoring something.
Yeah.
But it's the grain of the wood is literally frozen markings of time, so it's like a drumbeat, of this year, like each passing year.
Yeah.
And so it is percussive. I mean, it's visual percussion already. So then in order to make the paintings, I just go off. I go off of that, and I did that.
Yeah, and it's also like this beautiful way of like you follow the line. There's such movement through it. Like kind of in the same way.
I was doing things like this with Black Lake. Well, I was using plywood way back. I was photographing plywood and making sculptures out of the photographs using very thick plexi, or there were floor pieces or wall pieces. I've been interested in plywood a long time. And then we used plywood similarly to some of this early with Black Lake, or I did. That was sort of my contribution, one of them. And then, but now I'm adding things that make sound, and that actually was, we were hanging sculptures with Black Lake, and Moss one day stuck one of them on the painting, almost, just really, it was a great moment, and it's like, that's, I want to do that. I want to make sound paintings too.
Yeah.
But it was his sort of quick little gesture that started my mind going with that, and then I started making these porcelain pieces with you with the yellow round and attaching things to the paintings. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about collaborating. Sometimes, either with one person or with, like we did at the Yellow Round, that performance where it was so great that, I'm sorry, remind me of their names. Ocean and Eve organized that performance where they had a set of sort of John Cagean rules for the whole, everybody that was there. And things happen that you don't expect, and I love that. Yeah. Or
it was incredible.
Somebody adds, it's like adding to the recipe of the cake or whatever.
Well, that's one thing that I've always so appreciated and learned from your work. I mean, the first time I think I actually really ever saw your work was at that show at RISD that Jackie curated.
Oh, right.
And I saw your performance there.
You did? You were there?
I did. I was there.
Oh,
I was in that show too.
I didn't.
Yeah, I did. I was there kind of in the back, And I was just like, oh my God, this is totally wacky and this is absolutely incredible. And I think over the years, having gained friendship with you, I feel like your work is constantly opening up my ways of thinking and seeing, and really challenging sort of the containment of art, which is so important.
Well, I love the way that you think about space and objects in space and sculpture in the body, and definitely we've been influencing each other, I guess.
Completely. Yeah. But there's such a freedom in your work that's so incredible. Like there's just such an honesty and just complete, you're just present in it. And you allow us to be present in it too, which is such a gift.
I hope so. I want to invite people in.
I mean, that was the interesting thing at the performance that you did was, or we all did, I guess, was that it made people do things they weren't that comfortable with. And everyone really enjoyed it. It was such a fun evening, and it's expansive, right?
Yeah. At its best, art.
Right?
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
It would be.
But the fact that you like actually get people to do things is kind of incredible.
Mm-hmm.
You know. Yeah.
You know, it's really sometimes uncomfortable for
Yeah.
me too. Like it's vulnerable making, but it's sort of like in service of something else. You know, like whatever undefinable thing that this is that we're doing, which is sometimes I feel like really crazy. Like making art and making all this stuff is. There's times when I think like, wow, this is nuts. You know?
Yeah.
You ever have that?
Oh, totally, especially right now.
Yeah.
As we sit here in our masks.
Yeah, sometimes Alex.
Yeah.
And like, wow, humans do this, and here we are.
And we're the happiest when
and
we do
then,
it. No, yeah.
Right. It's exactly like we especially now.
Yeah.
Needing to do this thing that's pretty nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like these scholars rocks. I mean, there's something really crazy about them too. They're ancient, and they're supposedly like, you look at them and you see the way we would look at clouds. Chinese people see things in them, and they collect them, and
they're so beautiful.
but it's so wonderful. Like I guess that space between what's necessary and functional and needed, and what is magical and poetic and needed in another way. You know, the art and music and poetry, and it's what makes us human, maybe. Or it's just
yeah. I mean, I guess you just kind of answered my question, but I'm always sort of toying with the idea of function, just in function and use value.
Right. Well, especially if you come out of
exactly, and just the material inherently has use value. But all of these do too, right? I mean, and so
a lot of
they're all moving the intent of use
value. But I'm putting it I'm turning it upside down because, they have a function. A lot of these things, these materials have other functions. And then now they have this function as
they have a whole new function, right? Yeah. And when you're sort of sourcing and finding materials, what pulls? Is the sound what pulls you to them, or is it like
the potential,
aesthetic, the potential of sound?
Both.
Yeah.
Or I would say the potential for sound is the most important, and then I can change the aesthetic. I can work with the aesthetic. You know, like I'll mess with them or use them as an art material and add the aesthetics that I want, you know, the color or you know, macrame something, and you know.
I know, but I mean, just going back to function, like it's just the solutions to everything are through function. Yeah, which is
why you had asked me about abstraction at one point, and I was like, well, obviously this occupies the space of abstract art.
Yes.
Like you can't say it's but on the other hand, it's also functional, but I can barely think of it as abstraction. You know, abstraction of what, right?
Yeah.
Like, do you feel that way about what you're doing? Like, are you abstracting the vessel or the pot?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I'm not.
Yeah, I'm doing the exact opposite. I'm taking away its function, and you're embodying.
I'm giving this. That's interesting.
Yeah. So we were talking about function, and I wrote this question, which I'd love to ask. I mean, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about, but I just do feel like we can keep talking about function, and you've sculpted a beautiful life, which is so aware of your function within a community at large, with all of your activism and all of the various incredible jobs that you've had over the time I've known you, and how much care you put out into the world. And I can't help but see that in the work, and it's sort of going back to what we were talking about, even with like the joy that you brought a whole group of people. But
with the performance with
you know, just how much fun everyone had that night, you know. But I also want to know how you sort of see your life and your practices sort of fitting into the work as well as the function of the work, if that makes sense. Like all of the things you do.
Okay, I'm just going to talk. I don't know if I'm going to be able to answer.
Okay.
I'm going to talk about it. Well, life is not always nice and joyful and easy,
No.
obviously.
Mm-mm.
And I feel like I've danced with some very difficult things, and so have you. But the kind of, I've often said to my family and close people that we are so blessed and we are wealthy. Even when we're struggling financially, you cannot buy this. Like having this amazing group of creative people and also creative responses and try to make things beautiful and I just think of art, life as an art, like the art of life.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever gets tossed at us or me it's all just material for some other expression of something. So,
Yeah.
We had to leave the city because of finances, and we left under terrible, kind of really difficult circumstances because our building was destroyed, very badly damaged by Hurricane Sandy right in the middle. And then I didn't want to leave the city, but it was the right thing to do. And in the end, it's great, but I needed community. So I had long thought, I wish I had more, I would love to have an artist-run project or space. So that's how, and then lab space started, which also Slint Moss helped me at the beginning with. And many good things out of that collaboration. And then now I don't know what I was resisting by I love being here and all these amazing
It's
so
beautiful
many
to live
amazing
up here.
people.
Yeah.
We've really created this great we being all of us.
Yeah.
Like community here.
Yeah. But I also think of like
and then my work.
I was just going to say the fluidity of which you've so seamlessly worked through so many different jobs since I've known you, and they all like come back to me as based in care and studying to be a nurse, which is not an easy choice. Do you somehow feel that this work goes out into the world in that sort of conversation, or do you think they're totally separate?
Do you think that art making is a way of caring for humanity or about humanity, or is it a selfish act? Like
I get really confused on that issue. Like I feel like
it's both maybe because I ask myself that all the time. I mean, it's how I find solace when I'm not happy about
making
things or making.
Yeah,
like, it's like
sometimes
I think a lot of
like,
people.
Why am I doing
well,
this?
Well, the whole baking thing during the pandemic. I didn't do any baking, but I think it comes from the same place.
Yeah,
like I was doing this during that.
Well,
but I did very little baking. I did step into it and I thought, what am I doing? I can't even eat.
Patty baked a lot.
I'm allergic to the gluten. Really. And so yes, I think it's both selfish and then there's always the viewer in mind. Like, do you think about the conversation of art history or the so me too. Like I'm thinking about Duchamp. I'm thinking about all my heroes and like Duchamp
I loved your list of heroes.
Right?
Yeah, your list of heroes. Please put that on the screen.
Okay.
Yes.
Ava Hess, Michelle's so great. My friend Michelle, you should have been on the list. And I'm thinking of all those people are together with me when I'm making. It's the same way if I cook a meal, and I'm having guests. I'm thinking about all the people that are going to come. That is create. That is, and so that's selfish and community. It's both. I think it's both. Yeah.
Well, I was just talking to someone about this math project I was doing at the Tang, and at the end she asked me if I thought they were art, and I couldn't answer that question. I was like, I don't know. And we got into this very long conversation about it, but she sort of put forth as the idea of a museum as a place of social health. And I've been thinking about that so much, especially given this moment. I mean, it's hard not to talk about the pandemic,
interesting.
unfortunately. But
Yeah.
I just think, I'm just thinking about that a lot as I sit here in this work at this particular moment in time. And maybe it is that conflict of like, is this an outward or an inward gesture that makes the work so strong?
And right now, museums, because they're like physical spaces that are enclosed, have to really reinvent them.
Like a physical social health, even.
But like the Whitney, I mean, I did a bunch of the Whitney at home. Either art history, Zoom things, or little art lessons. Faye and I did them, and they did a great job of, you know. I guess, like, I love to cook, and I love to and have people over, and I do it a lot. And I can't do that right now much. I mean, we're a little bit outside, but I like to have a table, and that is the closest to making art, like those things.
Yeah.
More than some of the jobs I've had. And some of the jobs I've had have not been great, you know, like, or I haven't felt like I did that well with them, but others I haven't. I just keep reinventing myself, but right now I'm really loving doing, working with people at the end of life. Yeah.
I know.
It's so
Which is not so easy.
It's very interesting. It's not.
No.
It's not easy.
No.
But neither is making art.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's just interesting that a lot of times people choose their job outside of the making to be something that just like
feeds all kinds of things for me.
Yeah.
About consciousness, which is very much in this work, or in my. It's what I think about consciousness a lot.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. It totally does. I just think that you just have a beautiful way of mingling the two.
Okay, your phone storage is
Okay.
full.
All right. Finally, I would love to end on collaboration.
Oh yeah.
This work was begun at a different moment pre-pandemic, but I can still see it coming from a place of connection and need for connection. I think about performance at the Yellow Round and how this brought so many people together in action and brought so much joy, of course along with the challenging of art and function. I know there's been a huge switch in your making in the past 2 years. Your practice was collaborative for a long time, and this change has made you constructing and thinking about these works on your own, but for collaborative use. Can you discuss this? And can you also discuss the conceptual value of collaboration? Where is it coming from, and how and why you see it being used in your work and culturally?
Well, art and music are, especially music, are so much, they're just inherently collaborative. Art is collaborative, as I said, with the viewer, you know, and you have, as an art maker, I think you have to be thinking about the viewer, so you are collaborating with an anonymous other. And the viewer is bringing everything that they are and have learned to the experience. So that's a sort of unspoken collaboration. Music, you know, you make it with others, and maybe you're inventing the music, or maybe someone else has, and then of course the listeners, be them in live or recorded. So there's always thinking about connections with others.
I mean, the one thing I always find amazing is when I see music or listening to music and thinking about how present every person has to be at that given moment to make it come together in a completely and full way, which is so different than I mean, we have to be present when we're making art, but we never really get to experience that other person being present when they're looking at it.
Right.
But with these pieces,
I
you
do.
do. You do. You actually get to cross that line.
Yeah. At times, I mean, these exist just as visuals, and they're not always to be touched or, but I feel like they imply they imply sound. The visuals imply sound. So I think that, and I've been told the viewer hears the sound of just being in the presence of them. So that's their, you know, input.
Yeah.
But then when they're being performed, either, which is, you know,
something that has been people have been invited to do in kind of some sort of, time. There may be some small guidelines about how to interact with them, or sometimes I'll be performing these with a musician playing a different instrument, their own instruments, like I'm about to with Maliki with the harp, and so, but I do get to see how people, at times, how they interact with these, and so that sets me apart from a lot of other artists, and also myself as an artist in the past, where you just put the work out there and you're not even there to. It's a little disconnected. You don't know how
people are seeing it.
Right. So
totally.
I really did grow to like performing. Before with Black Lake, I was performing things that were highly rehearsed, and we were doing little basically operas that had a theme, with the beginning, middle, end, and we would improvise from a place of being very rehearsed. This is different. These are basically improvised situations, and sometimes I feel extremely vulnerable because I don't know where it's going. It's like drawing in public, drawing in public or something.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's good. I mean, Laurie Simmons used to told me long ago when I was young that she realized that her best work was the work that made her the most embarrassed.
Yeah.
So being vulnerable is fine, and sometimes it's kind of not great.
Yeah.
What happens isn't the best, but at least it's being done.
Yeah. And
and
it's what you grow from.
And people had an experience, and
Yeah.
I think people are craving, because we're so digital, we're craving actual experiences. We're not just audience members.
Yeah, I can't begin to tell you how nice this is. Oh my
Having conversation.
I know, sitting in a room with you. I know. Yeah.
We will say there's a lot of air in this room.
Yeah.
And hopefully the viral, we're not
Yeah.
infected, but we're hopefully healthy too. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so nerve-wracking.
The sculptures, just to kind of, two things I just wanted to finish on, that you kind of touched a bit on, the construction of the sculptures and the improv quality of playing them. Is there an improv quality to making them?
Yeah.
Like, could they change the next time you install them?
Well, I just saw, I have lots of racks. I found like a source where I bought tons of them for really cheap. So now these are fixed.
Yeah,
these are pieces
done.
that are fixed.
These
These will not change.
Yeah.
I know how to take them apart and put them back together again, and they have their own little suitcases that are very carefully, like have foam little receptacles for everything, and so no, these are done. But I just collect lots and lots of stuff, and it's sort of like a mad chemist or something, like I'm just mixing.
Yeah.
It's that time of
giant collage.
It's sort of like alchemy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, and there's collage element to the paintings too.
Yeah.
But it's really, really fun, and to in that space of just having all the stuff around and making them.
Yeah.
So it's been really a terrific, uplifting, great project.
Yeah.
Me, and I hope that translates to the experience of viewing them.
Oh, completely.
Or
Such
hearing-
a pleasure
or hearing
sitting
them.
here, or hearing them, or
And then to be
thinking about them.
To be in this particular setting, in a domestic setting, and Tanja Grunert Salon, Princess Beatrix, this house is her home. I just love it. It just feels so right for this moment. Because we're craving that. And she lives in a separate part, and she feels safe with this. With antibodies, so that helps for her. But I think it's a pretty safe situation because it's so breezy here, and it just feels just right.
Yeah.
So,
And it brings a whole nother level of conversation into the idea of the body and function.
I know.
So it's incredible.
Yeah. And these are so much about the body in terms of, because they have to be interacted with.
Yeah. and scale, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the found objects, everything. They're beautiful.
Yeah, a lot of the found objects are things you know, they're functional, so they have to do with your hands and
Yeah.
you know. Yeah.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
inviting me to do this.
Okay,
Yeah, perfect. Okay.